Welcome to Wildly Wealthy Life, the show that's all about exploring the different paths to a life of freedom and fulfillment and how that ripples through your personal life, family life, and to the community. Join husband and wife power couple Lee and Kat Hughes as they share people's stories from different backgrounds and lifestyles about what it means to live a life well lived. Tune in and take that first step to becoming the best version of yourself, personally and professionally, here on Wildly Wealthy Life.
How I would define wealth, it's good to have a solid money foundation, but it's about living a life you want. It's about working on projects you're passionate about. It's about developing healthy relationships with the people around you, having a strong positive impact on your environment or in your community.
All right, and welcome to another episode of Wildly Wealthy Life podcast. I'm Lee, your host for the day, along with my lovely and talented, amazing, funky chicken dancer.
Okay, let's keep this going.
Okay. Kat, who do we have on today?
Today we have Jonathan. I am so excited to have him today because he is actually our very first guest from internationally. He's from Luxembourg, so we have our first international guest on our show today. Really excited. He's a blogger and he's really passionate about personal finance. So I just love to kind of dig deep into his thoughts about personal finance and anything else that he is able to share with us today. So Jonathan, thank you for being with us here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thank you for having this great conversation this international conversation. So excited to be your first international guest.
Yeah, Jonathan, what time is it there where you are right now? You're in Luxembourg. And so what time is it there for you?
It's 6:30 p.m. here.
6:30 p.m. Nice. Mm-hmm. That's amazing, right? The power of technology that we can just get to chat and have this Zoom call with you. It's really awesome. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do and just your background?
Yeah, so I, as you mentioned, I run the blog johnnytalks.com. I also do a podcast, which you've been on, Kat.
Yeah.
And this is about personal finance, and I like to go broad as well with book reviews, investing, career tips, etc. So this is a hobby that I'm trying to develop more seriously as a business. Mm-hmm. And I have a day job, which is in procurement. So it's mostly about negotiating, setting up contracts and dealing with our commercial relations with our vendors and suppliers. So it's in the energy sector. Mm. And my studies, what I studied back in the days, that was I have a degree in finance.
But you have a degree in finance. And what was it that really made you interested in personal finance? I mean, you studied it, but what was kind of like the trigger, like back in the day, like why that, out of everything?
Yeah, so it's a great story and it's a great question you're asking because as I said, I studied finance, but it's not that which triggered my interest in personal finance. Personal finance came later, actually, so 4 or 5 years ago. And the two are not necessarily related because you can be very good in personal finance and suck at corporate finance or suck at your job, or the contrary, you can be very good with financing modeling, etc., but then you can suck at personal finance because I think a lot of it has to do with mindset and other things and background, etc. So my interest, back to the question, my interest for personal finance came actually from a situation of abundance. Which is a bit different than many other people who come from a situation of debt, especially in the US. And then they get interested into personal finance and they get out of debt and then they live a very good life with good and sound finances. For me, it was when I got in my day job, I got moved to Paris as an expat. And it was a chance to earn a bit more. And I got moved there, so my apartment was paid by the company. So I had a lot of these perks, and I rented out my apartment. At the time, I was living in Norway. So, I was, getting, in French, we say le beurre et l'argent du beurre, which means I was getting the butter and the money of the butter. So, the cake and the cherry, I think that's the equivalent in English. So I was having it all. And then
having your cake and eating it too.
Exactly. Oh yeah, that's the right one. Yeah. So I don't know. Here we prefer butter. And with this situation, it's allowed me to think, well, okay, what am I going to do with that money? I mean, so it led to a bit more than $2,000 extra in my pocket every month altogether. And I was thinking, yeah, well, of course I can go in Paris and visit around and go every night to a nice restaurant or party or whatever. But okay, I was thinking, well, it's nice, of course, I will enjoy some things, but I want to make a good use of that money. I want to, how can I make smart moves with that extra cash? Mm-hmm. And actually, this is how I started to dig more into personal finance and really started to read blogs and podcasts and YouTube videos. This is where it all started, actually. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of that year, it's in 2016. So in October, November, I started my blog with a few posts, and they suck, but it's fun. It doesn't matter. I mean, my first blog post, it has no picture, but I left it like that. I didn't re-edit. I just leave it like that as a, how can I say, a memory or testimony. Yeah. So it all started there, actually.
That's really awesome. And with your blogs, we, as we do podcasting and everything, everybody's, first few episodes kind of suck. But what was it?
Us too.
Yeah. What was it that? What was the kind of the fuel in the tank that kept you going, though? That kept you like pursuing and kind of pushing through those first few episodes?
Yeah. Episodes of blog posts. Well, first I wanted to start. So I said, well, let's try it. I'm a guy that I like to experiment. Mm-hmm. I mean, even I have a podcast, and it's also I see it as an experiment as well, getting better. And I guess you two guys, it's like trying, seeing where it goes, seeing where it takes you. And in the case of the blog, it has led me to a lot of things, and I will explain. So first I wanted to write, and my intention was it's kind of a journal. Mm-hmm. And as well, I wanted to help people because I know that I'm more interested in topics around money, a bit more nerdy in some aspects. And okay, I wanted to try to help people because not everybody is interested, or not everybody is as nerdy and wants to do all the hard work, the research. Mm-hmm. So this was a starting point. And then I said, well, my intention was, hey, maybe if somebody reads and starts to, let's say, put some money automatically aside every month, that's a great win already.
Right.
So that was the first intention. And then I wanted to continue to develop, and I was reading blogs and books. And then you get to know more. And then you get also, as you know more, you also get more questions. You start to grow, you start to get contact. Then people, friends start to ask questions about, hey, should I invest in a Tesla? Should I start, where can I open a brokerage account, and my parents as well. So, it starts to come, it starts to get traction little by little. And then, and it's something I really enjoy, and I don't want to quit. I'm not quitting, at least not the personal finance itself, maybe the blog or the podcast, but it will evolve in another form. But what I want to say is that, it attracted many opportunities. And as I mentioned off air, I went to FinCon as well in September 2019. Mm-hmm. And as well, then I got to network with a lot of people. And as well, I'm trying to grow my social media networks with other like-minded people.
Yeah.
On Twitter, for example. So, it sparks a lot of stuff and shares. And we're growing all together. So it's a great community. And I'm trying to help people. And we already had some good results. So it's great.
Yeah, I love that you're even just like as you said, if one person, saves money, you're already making a difference there, and I love that you're focusing on kind of like the small wins and not really putting so much pressure on yourself to grow right away, and that everything is kind of an experiment, but also like you're learning as you experiment along the way, and things can change, and even just like your perspective and the way you see personal finance can change over the years. And I love that you're open about that. I want to kind of go back to when you said, people who study finance can be really, really good at corporate like finance and handling other people's money, but they can sometimes not be good at handling their own money, right? So there's a difference between those two things. With that, with the difference, can you also kind of share with us, what do you think is like the biggest difference with kind of the finances and how people handle their finances there in your area, like in your country, compared to what you've seen or what you've kind of noticed with how people observe finances here in the US?
Yeah. So, okay, of course, I moved here 2 years ago. It's a bit difficult to see. It's quite an international country, Luxembourg. I lived in Norway. I lived in, well, I'm Belgian actually. So most of my life, I lived in Belgium. So up to my first real job.
Mm.
So what I would say is that here in Europe, and of course, I've been reading a lot of blogs and been chatting with many Americans on personal finance. One big difference is the student loans.
Mm.
I mean, I cannot put all of Europe into one big bag, but at least a major difference is the student loans and the credit card debt. These are the two maybe largest differences that I see. Yeah. The feeling of a burden is much less.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, because when I started my career, for example, all my studies were paid off. I mean, I made an article and I just looked at the price of the tuition fee of my university, what it was costing in 2019. It is 900 euros per year for finance, for masters in finance. So it's nothing compared to what you have in the US, what you pay for. So that was in Belgium. So it's very low. So when I started my career, and like many of my friends in all countries, you start your career, you have zero in debt.
Wow. Yeah. What do you think is the cultural upbringing and the difference? Because when it comes to credit card debt, obviously a lot of it, like here in America, it's almost like it's encouraged. A lot of times people who are in college, there's events and there's always like a credit card booth at like college events, and they're always like, oh, hey, here's a credit card and make sure you use it because it's going to help you build your credit. So it's almost encouraged, but really they're telling them it's going to build their credit, but not really educating them on how to use it. What is kind of just the cultural difference between here we're being encouraged to use it, and over there you don't have as much credit card debt? So then what is the mentality, like what is the thinking of like people in your area?
It's a bit difficult to say, but at least I can share my experience with the credit cards. I think my first credit card, I was 25 or something like this, just before I moved out of my parents' house. So I applied myself because I wanted to buy stuff online. But before that, I never had a credit card. And my parents, they don't use it a lot. I mean, they use it to book trips online and stuff like this. But in general, we don't use it a lot. Okay, now more and more because, when I was 25, that's 15 years ago. But I mean, we, at least in my case, I don't buy stuff when I don't have the money up front.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, so that's something I've always done or try to do or plan it. I mean, if I need to buy a plane ticket of 1,000 euros, okay, I'll try to plan it that I can pay in 2-3 months, but without delays. That's me. I think people also get in debt. Don't get me wrong here, but I think that the amounts are much less. And I think from what I see around me, I mean, people buy trips, they book tickets to travel, but it's more. They're more responsible, but they're also afraid of getting into debt. No, but it's true. I mean, and I think that was one of my things is that when I started to use it, I was afraid to get into debt because I didn't really know how it worked, with the revolving credit. So I didn't know how it worked, but I was afraid. So that was the main thing.
I think it's a matter of just the education too. Like I know like growing up on my end, like in high school, we had an awesome finance guy come in like the very end of my senior year, which didn't really help because I had already gotten my first credit card and had like racked it up. But it was helpful in just giving me the perspective because he showed a bunch of the like how we're marketed to and a bunch of logos for like different department stores, soft drinks, all these different types of stuff. And all of us were like, oh, that's Pepsi, that's Coke, that's this, that's that. We're knocking them off. And then they showed this big, huge rock. We're like, what is that? I don't know. Prudential. What is Prudential? And then like they started going through all these different like huge like stock and retirement funds and different corporations that we had no clue on. But that was the first time I had the kind of the blinders taken off a little bit to see like, oh,
consumerism is
so
encouraged here. You know, we can definitely detect like what do you call that, the brand names, but not so much like the financial,
right?
Like,
the financial education side of things. And that's where I wanted to maybe dive back a little bit to your history. Like with your parents, it seems like you had a bit of education, or you got to see them handle money differently. Can you talk a little bit about like growing up and what your expectations of money and how to use it was?
Yeah, sure. With my parents, and the thing is, I'm very grateful because I think they gave me good money values. They were not experts. I mean, I'm the nerd interested in personal finance and digging into the numbers and the financial accounts of companies, etc. Not my parents. My parents, they gave me good values. They always told me, well, look, money is a tool. It will not bring you money as such, will not bring you happiness. Don't chase it.
right.
Yeah.
And so be responsible. I think that the message was be responsible with money. And they never were against investing, or they not against becoming rich. They say if you become rich one day, handle your finances responsibly. That was their way of teaching.
Yeah, that's awesome. When it comes to investing, what's been like your favorite investing vehicles, like personally for yourself?
Favorite, then it makes it emotional. I would say that the best has been my first apartment. The favorite, I don't know, because I like a lot of things, and I dabbled into Bitcoin. I've been a bit into peer-to-peer lending just to see a bit how it works as well. The favorite, I think real estate. It's really great. I really like it. And to go back to the first apartment, this apartment has doubled in value before I sold it. So this was as well a trigger to dig into personal finance. Okay, how do I tap into this? I mean, how do I use this value increase?
Yeah, can you talk?
It was also the start of then investing in other venues and trying to increase the wealth as well.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about peer-to-peer lending? What's been your experience in that, and kind of expand just a little bit on that, as well as also Bitcoin? Just also interested in, your experience in that.
Yeah. So for peer-to-peer lending, this I started a bit myself like in November last year. So it's pretty new to me. So it's more like, how does it work? And trying with a little money, because to me that's high risk. So the higher the risk, the less money you should put in, at least at first.
Yeah.
And so far, so good. I mean, I'm using European platforms. So one platform is called Mintos. It's a loan originator. So people, they aggregate a lot of loans. So it's quite, I think it's a bit like Lending Club or something that you have in the US. And then the other one is Crowdestor. So this is peer-to-peer, but it's corporate. So it's for projects in the Baltics. So Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia. And it's, for example, a market, it's, for example, for projects where the company needs fundings. And then you put some money in there, and then you get a return. So the markets wants to expand. So the supermarket wants to expand with new aisle or whatever, or new machines. And then you finance it, and then they give you return. So this platform is a bit more secure. So it feels good because they all have a backup for that, for every operation. So I'm quite confident in it, and I've done a lot of research obviously before investing into that. It works well so far. It gives me a good return, about 12%. The other Mintos, since it's linked to a retail investor, no, not retail investors, private persons. It's loan. So here I put a freeze. So I had an automatic investment mechanism in that platform, but I put it on hold because of the situation. I don't know if people will lose their jobs or not. So I put it on hold, but I didn't put a lot of money, so I'm happy.
Yeah.
But it seems a reliable platform, and that's what encourages me to still use it and to see how it's going to develop. To go back to Bitcoin, that's a really weird animal.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of research. I even followed the course to understand better. And so blockchain and Bitcoin, they're linked. And there's two aspects. So there's the financial aspect. I mean, cryptocurrencies and valuations going up of Bitcoin up to 20,000 back in December 2017 with weird fluctuations all the time. So it's very interesting. I'll get back to that. And the second is the technology itself, which is entering several industries, and it's entering at a rapid pace. I mean, on LinkedIn, there was an article about the top skills of 2020, and blockchain was number one.
Yeah.
So to go back to cryptocurrencies and all the craziness, well, yes, I started to enter this market in 2017 in the summer. And I was watching a lot of videos on YouTube to understand how it worked and this and that. And I got into the course, and I'm following it from afar. So things got crazy, and I put like some fun money in there. And it was interesting to see, because cryptocurrency, if you really get into it, it's all about linking it to the monetary system, to politics, to industries. I mean, then you touch a bit. I mean, it's hybrid. It touches on everything.
Yeah,
I'm not an expert in all these things, but it's really funny because it's money. It's another way of transferring value.
Yeah.
Right. And I know that they were looking at some ways of trying to get the like American currency more onto like a cryptocurrency and just changing like a whole country's like way of using money, which would be insane. There's also supposed to be like a halving event, I believe, this week or next week with Bitcoin, which is supposed to help drive that price up like a whole bunch, but we will see.
Yeah, we will see this thing. I followed the course like 2 years ago. I'm following it a bit, but yeah, it's very technical. I mean, I'm not a technical guy. I'm more like a business and personal finance guy, but I want to understand. So I just want to understand the basics and see how it works. And indeed, the halving is for the listeners and the viewers. So it's just that Bitcoin works with miners, so they are responsible to keep the system going. Let's say, to make it simple, and they get rewarded in crypto, in Bitcoin. So before the halving, they were getting 12.5 Bitcoin for solving each and every problem, let's say, for keeping the network up. I'm trying to make it simple. Yeah. And then the halving means that now they will be paid 6.25. So the value of the reward for mining Bitcoin is halved. And this happens every now and then, so that's why.
Yeah, I think that I would just wanted to point out how you said, I put in some fun money in there, and I think it's really good to kind of note that when you become really responsible about your finances and you're able to have some extra fun things, like personal finance actually becomes so much more interesting, because for some people who don't have that extra funds, they're not going to want to dive into, something that's harder to understand, maybe like Bitcoin, and cryptocurrency. But for someone who has some extra funds and can put some fun money in, I think it's always good to expand. It's always good to kind of, did you want to ask?
Yeah. So with your experiences, like you've been around the globe, you've been able to study finance and whatnot for quite a while, over 15, 20 years. What is your definition of wealth with the variety of people that you've been able to come in contact with, and for you, your own personal viewpoint on it?
Yeah, excellent question, because wealth, this definition has evolved through the years. When I was a kid, it was diving into a pool of coins, like DuckTales,
Yes. Uncle Scrooge.
Uncle Scrooge, yeah. So in French, it's even funnier because we call it picsou, and it means steal money, actually. So it's a bit weird, but it sounds funny in a way.
Yeah. It's hilarious.
Yeah, it's hilarious. So that was my vision of wealth. And then, the people with Lambos and super great villas with swimming pools, etc., the celebrities' lifestyle. So that was wealth. But then, of course, over the years, and I would say in recent years, actually, how I would define wealth is not, it's good to have a solid money foundation, but it's about living a life you want, actually. It's about working on projects you're passionate about. It's about developing healthy relationships with the people around you, having a strong positive impact on your environment or in your community.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's about that, and it's about making conscious choices, not, how can I say, in the US you have this expression, keeping up with the Joneses. It's not about living according to what society says. It's about, of course, you need to respect the rules and blah, blah, but you need to define what you want and live according to your values, actually. And it doesn't matter if people think you're weirdo or whatever, but just live according to your values.
Right.
And if you can achieve that, or if you develop habits or a lifestyle working towards what you want, then I think you have a wealthy lifestyle. And it doesn't mean you have 3 million in your bank account. It can be with much less. It's just about what you do, how you handle your life, your relations, and your environment.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love that. I think what really stood out to me the most is when you said the ability to be able to make your own choices. That's it. To be ability, obviously live and be able to understand like how the world works, but also really having your own values and like being able to live that out. I love that.
But I also think like you've got a very balanced look at it as well, because you've got, you're looking at the finance side, but also how are you helping yourself, making yourself happy, but your community and your family and the people around you. And it's a nice, I like that.
Yeah, great balance. Kind of going into that, what areas of your community do you love to serve into?
Well, I'm a Christian, so I go to church. So it's, for example, okay, I'm not doing much there, but for example, I help with the setup, like putting the chairs and everything. Now and then it's we change turns on this, and then this is a small thing. But then, for example, like last week, with the COVID situation, this is, for example, where I had an idea. I don't know, you walk and then you have this idea that comes in, and I wanted to give a thank you to the people in the supermarkets where I always go, because they've been very nice, and the situation has been crazy and people not always behaving like they should. And I think they're a lot on pressure. So I just want to show a nice gesture to them, a sort of thank you. So with a friend, we just wrote a small card, and we gave a big box of chocolates just for all the personnel. So it's a small attention.
Yeah.
It's a small thing. It didn't cost me a lot, but I think it's all about the impact.
Yeah.
I wanted to say, look, hey, guys, thank you so much. I know it's hard for you. And when I went to the supermarket, the lady called the manager of the supermarket, and they were really happy. They were like, "Oh, thank you so much. It's not big, but they really enjoyed." And it's this kind of small things, like be generous, be nice. Give. Here we don't tip too much at the restaurant in Europe, but for example, sometimes when you have a great service, well, you give a little tip.
Yeah.
So that means that it's a good tip. So in the US, then you double or you triple, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's about, I like small kind gestures around. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or helping a tourist, that is lost. And
that would be me. I'm always lost.
I would help you. I would gladly help you.
I just really, really love that, because I think it's more about the personal connection that you get to do, and you going to your local supermarket and making their day brighter of those people who are, considered our essential workers right now, and it's just such an amazing testimony of, being able to just serve in your own little way. And it's just an example. There was a time here in the States, actually, well, it still happens a lot right now, where it's like the cops always have a bad rep, The cops are always looked at as the bad guys. And actually there was a time where there was something that had happened where it was just so bad at that time. And I don't know if you remember this, but for like a couple...
I was actually just thinking about that. It's funny that you're talking about that.
Yeah, for a couple months, I had gone to our local police department, and I would just deliver cookies like every Friday, like every single week. Nice. And I would just be like, hey, and I would just write like a little note just saying, love you guys, thank you for your service, really thank you for like keeping our community safe. And just basically just to tell them that like people think you guys are the bad guys, but there's still people out there that think that you guys are doing great work, because they're not all bad guys. Like, of course there's the bad cops, but there's also good cops. So it's just something personal. It wasn't anything on our budget. It didn't break our budget, to like buy a thing of cookie and deliver them to the local police station. It really didn't. But it's something that I know made their day bright. Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
and it's I believe that sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
I believe that just one thing is that all those small actions, it's small.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost much, but I think it has positive ripple effects. And also that's why I was thinking, the chocolate, it's not much, but you never know. I think it could spark a lot of further positive reactions, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. And in your own life, Jonathan, what would be some tips that you could share with the audience to help help other people get on their path to a wildly wealthy life?
I have 3 actionable tips. And number 1 is to identify what were your successes so far.
That's
because
nice.
this will give you confidence to maybe move out slowly and then out of your comfort zone. It's about building confidence and slowly building up your confidence. And I will give you an example. It's a silly, but it's something I remembered. It's let's say you want to learn to dive, and maybe you're not comfortable, but then maybe you can start with snorkeling. And then if you do that 2 or 3 times and you feel comfortable breathing through the mask and the snorkel, the snorkel, then maybe you're ready to try to dive with the gas bottles and everything. So it's a small thing, and then it can be applied to any areas in life, or in your career, in your job. You can try to ask for a raise. Okay, maybe you will ask the totally wrong way the first time, but then you will prepare. You will try to prepare your case better for the next negotiation. It's all a learning process. But the important thing is, if you identify a small success, hey, I achieved this, and I know Kat and we play music, so hey, I managed a little complicated piece on the piano, on the guitar for me. Hey, it's good. Maybe I can try something different, or something new, something more complex, and then you build up that confidence. And I think if you develop this in further areas of your life, I think you will start to build a widely wealthy life.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
One thing I love doing, I was asked to, as far as like some motivation and some, pick-me-ups, because everybody's going through some things, during the COVID-19 crisis. But exactly what you said is like, look back at what your victories were. So, everybody has a phone, everybody's taking pictures every 2 seconds. But if you go back just to the beginning of the year and you really just take some time to go through and remember the big wins that you've had, the positive experiences that you've had, the friends that you've been able to impact, like that carries so much weight and gives you so much fuel to go after, that next thing and more. Yeah. It's awesome. A really good tip, Jonathan.
Yeah. All right. I think that was your first actionable tip, right? Did you have 2 more for us?
I was good with that.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah, no, that was really, really, really good. But he did say that he has like 3. So I was like, I don't want to cheat him and only have him share 1.
Okay. And then the number 2, it's a bit linked to that, but it's about develop 1 positive habit. And it can be anything, and start small. For example, make your bed every morning if you don't do that already, or exercise every day, but then maybe that can be a simple walk. So if you walk 20 minutes, 30 minutes, make something small, but do it consistently.
Yeah.
Try to develop 1 habit, or maybe, personal finance, try to save 10%, at least to start with, if you haven't already started yet. And just do it. Just do that. Focus on doing that and on keeping that habit, and see where it takes you. Because what why do I say this, is that if you keep a habit and you see positive effects, in the long run, it has been proven, this comes from The Power of Habit, great book, it will have ripple effects on your other areas of your life. And they call that in the book, it's called keystone habits. So you start, let's say, save money, and then suddenly, before you know it, you start doing more sports, you start to pay attention to your diet and all these things. So it's been proven. They don't know exactly why it happens, but I think there's a whole chapter on that in the book. So I would say that's my actionable tip number 2. And then the third tip, actually, it's considering 1 and 2. If you started something and it doesn't work, well, change it. If pivot, I mean, it's a bit like lean startup mentality. It's like you have tried something, it doesn't work, okay, change. If making your bed every morning doesn't have a positive consequence on your life, well, forget about it and try to do something else. For example, one thing I've been doing is simply I bought a physical alarm clock, old school, instead of waking up with the phone. So I remove my phone out of the bedroom, and this works well. So try to change this kind of things and see what works for you.
That's amazing. I love that. It's so good. Yeah. I love just especially the kind of taking account of like, what have you done so far? Just kind of like really celebrating your wins. That's really, really awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Jonathan. We are going to our quick 10 rapid fire questions. And these are questions we ask all of our guests. Some of them are random. Some of them are related to our podcast theme. We just want you to say the first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready?
I am.
All right. Okay. Number 1, if you could choose one book to live by, what would it be?
How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Awesome. Your personal hero, living, deceased, someone you know or don't know?
This is a hard one. I've been listening to your other podcast, and this question comes often. I have a few heroes in a few areas. So recently, I've been trying to play a quite challenging piece from Megadeth. So it's hard, it's heavy metal, and the guy Dave Mustaine, he's amazing. I was like, but actually, he's awesome. He can sing on complicated pieces of guitar, and I saw some video on YouTube, and he can actually play solos. So okay, the guy, I'm just bluffed, and he's great. He's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, the one thing you intentionally have to do every single day.
Here now we are in this COVID situation, so I'm home. So what I've been doing more lately is to play the guitar and to read.
Nice.
That's really good.
Really nice.
Which might butt into this next one, but one hobby that brings you the most joy.
And actually here I'm a bit it's guitar and all that is related to personal finance, the blog and the podcast. I don't know which one gives me more joy. I like both, actually.
Yeah, That's awesome. Most rewarding thing you've done for someone in need?
This is hard because I would say that back to what I said before is that when when a disaster happened or whatever, you can give your money, you can wire money, and it's great. Okay, and as well, it can be tax deductible. But I think the biggest thing is when you have met somebody. And okay, recently there was the supermarket, but I as well helped back in 2015. There was this refugee crisis, so I went to a refugee center when I was living in Norway, and I helped to set up beds and this kind of stuff. So it was IKEA furniture building. So and that was kind of rewarding because as well, then we spent a little bit of time to talk with some of them. There were some Syrians. So I think that was one of the most rewarding so far. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
First movie quote that comes to mind.
Yeah. I don't know why this comes, but I think it's because we have some private jokes with friends and I worked in sales before. So I would say this: put that coffee down. Coffee is for closers only.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. You're speaking to his heart again. All right. Last big purchase you made for yourself.
So I bought a watch, actually, a dive watch.
Oh,
That's
nice.
Fun. Food you cannot live without.
Butter.
There's two things again. Actually, it's involved a good old steak with béarnaise sauce, and I really like, or a very delicious pizza.
Okay, perfect. What is your spirit animal?
Here I'm gonna say a fox.
A fox. We haven't heard of fox yet.
What does the fox say? Okay, number 10, the last one. Finish this sentence. If I'm stuck on an island by myself, ...
where's the happy hour?
If you're by yourself, it's happy hour all the time.
Yay!
Go grab some coconuts, and I guess you're just gonna have to look for the alcohol.
Pina coladas.
Yeah, I know, all day long. Well, Jonathan, thank you for being with us here today. It's just such a pleasure to talk to you. We have two parting questions for you. One, where can our listeners find out more about you? And number two, if you were to encourage our listeners to give or serve into something, what would that be?
Yeah, so my blog is johnnytalks.com. So it's spelled JONEYTALKS.com. And I'm everywhere on social media and on Apple Podcasts. So it's at Johnny Talk. So it's quite easy. Mm-hmm. And then for whatever organization that the listeners want to give, I would say I'm personally giving every month to an organization called 5 Talents. It's in the UK, but I think they have a sister company in the US. It's about, they are giving, providing microfinance solutions for a underserved country like in Africa and Latin America. Mm. And it's something, I really enjoy giving to, because I met one volunteer 2 years ago, and I liked it because it's helping, how can you say this? Yeah, it's helping people you don't give a fish to the people, you learn them how to fish. Yeah. So you give them some, but you help contributing to their businesses. I mean, because the organization organizes literacy courses, financial literacy courses, and business and entrepreneurships in those countries. And then they start their own business, whether it's making clothes or farms, etc. So I really like that. So what I would say is that this speaks to me. Yeah. So try to find a charity which you're passionate about, whether it's organizing, maybe you're passionate about education and then you want to support let's say, schools in Africa or whatever, or maybe you're more into health, so support the Red Cross. So find something that you enjoy and then give freely.
That's so awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. We have loved our time with you. We really enjoy it. And thanks for being with us.
Yeah, I enjoyed my time as well. So thanks for hosting me, guys.
No problem. Yeah. Take care.
That was a great chat with Jonathan. Really enjoyed our first international guest. I just love that. What I really love was just his outlook on service and giving into something that is very, very personal, like having a face-to-face connection, one. But also I really love the charity that he talked about at the very end called 5 Talents, where it's not just about giving someone fish, but actually teaching someone how to fish. So what he's doing is donating into an organization that is actually supporting businesses so that these people can, instead of just getting funds, right, just for their necessary day-to-day living, they're getting funds for their businesses that is hopefully going to grow them even further.
And for me, I really enjoyed just hearing the world perspective on finance. And he's been able to travel, to the US, all through Europe, and has quite a bit of study in finance, and just hearing some of his tips for, living a wildly wealthy life. It's really fun. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. And who do we have next week?
Well, next week we have Brian Long. I am very, very excited to chat with Brian Long because Brian is actually a really great friend of mine. So background, we actually met from doing a show together and didn't realize years later that we would get reconnected again because he is also doing real estate investing. Mm-hmm. And so I had visited him in Oklahoma and figured out if we could partner together in a couple deals. Just really excited to share his experience with you from going 0 to literally about 10 properties in 1 year. So just really excited to share that episode with you guys next week. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it with at least 1 or 2 person that you think will be impacted by this. And go on iTunes to rate, subscribe, and give us a review if you enjoyed our show today.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Wildly Wealthy Life. We hope that this episode has helped you take another step towards living fully, giving freely, and building a legacy that deeply impacts your community. We'd love to hear what you think about today's show. Please leave us a review or like us on iTunes and YouTube, and click the subscribe button so you won't miss a show. You can also visit us at wildlywealthylife.com for today's show notes. See you on our next episode. Thank you, and may you live a wildly wealthy life.